Zara sprints frantically inside colossal, grinding steel clock gears that threaten to crush her. Notifications buzz furiously around her head like metal flies. A massive clock face looms ahead, hands spinning wildly. She is trapped in a cold, relentless machine running out of time. The scene opens in a sleek, ultra-modern corporate boardroom perched on the top floor of a glass and steel skyscraper. The city skyline below is a sprawling, endless grid of cold blue and ice-white lights, reflecting sharply off the polished, sterile surfaces inside the room. Zara stands commandingly at the head of a massive steel conference table, concluding a high-stakes presentation. She looks absolutely impeccable, armored in a sharply tailored charcoal gray suit and a sleek, modern electric blue hijab that reflects the screen's glow. On a massive, wall-sized screen behind her, complex graphs and impressive profit projections glow in sharp, cool neon tones. As she finishes her final, decisive point, the room erupts into enthusiastic, synchronized applause. Important-looking executives in expensive suits nod in approval, visibly impressed by her relentless efficiency and data-driven prowess. For a fleeting moment, Zara feels a surge of powerful adrenaline, the intoxicating, addictive high of worldly success. She feels invincible, the master of her domain. Yet the environment is sterile and deeply cold. The air conditioning hums loudly, and there is absolutely no warmth in the lighting, only the sharp, clinical glare of corporate success. The victory feels metallic, hard, and ultimately hollow. The applause has barely faded when the scene shifts abruptly to the chaotic, high-speed reality of Zara's daily life. She is power-walking furiously through a busy, polished glass corridor, literally running from one high-pressure meeting to the next. She clutches a large, lukewarm takeaway coffee cup in one hand like a lifeline, and her heavily scheduled glowing tablet in the other, which is constantly pinging aggressively with new demands and emails. A sleek Bluetooth earpiece flashes cool blue in her ear as she barks rapid-fire instructions on a multi-line conference call, not even looking up. She squeezes herself into a crowded, silent elevator, her eyes darting anxiously to her expensive wristwatch every few seconds, as if willing time to slow down. Her digital calendar is flashed on screen briefly. It is a dense, terrifying block of color-coded commitments with absolutely zero white space for breathing, eating, let alone thinking or praying. The pressure is immense and relentless. She is moving fast, achieving a lot, but she is constantly breathless, existing in a perpetual state of high-functioning anxiety and adrenaline. The world around her is a blur of motion. She is merely a highly efficient cog in a cold machine that never stops. It is late evening, long after normal working hours. The vast office floor is largely empty, bathed in the eerie, artificial, silent glow of dozens of computer monitors and the distant, impersonal city lights outside. Zara is still chained to her desk, surrounded by a fortress of screens and piles of paper. Her personal phone, lying face up near her keyboard, suddenly lights up warmly with an incoming call. The photo on the screen is her mother, smiling lovingly. Zara stops typing and stares at the glowing face for a long, agonizing second. Her finger hovers hesitantly over the green accept button. A pang of genuine, deep guilt pierces through her armored stress. She knows she hasn't spoken to her family properly in weeks. But then, a bright red notification for an urgent client email pops up on her main screen, demanding immediate attention. The immediate pressure of the dunya, worldly work, overrides the deeper, slower need for connection. With a heavy sigh of frustration mixed with guilt, she taps decline and sends a cold, pre-written text. Can't talk now, swamped. Call weekend. The silence in the office after she declines the call feels heavier, colder, and more isolating than before. Minutes later, a discreet, soft notification pops up quietly in the corner of Zara's primary screen. It is the prayer time app, indicating Maghrib, sunset prayer. Zara glances at it quickly, then looks at the imposing pile of work still left to do, and the digital clock ticking mercilessly towards a project deadline. The internal spiritual battle is sharp but dangerously brief. Just one more email section, she lies convincingly to herself, her fingers resuming their furious typing. I'm on a roll. I'll pray as soon as I finish this part. Allah understands I'm busy right now. She actively pushes the thought of prayer to the back of her mind, deprioritizing her duty to her Creator in favor of the immediate demands of her career. As she makes this conscious choice, the visual metaphor of her stress begins to manifest. Around her desk, subtle, ghostly, translucent outlines of giant metallic clock gears begin to materialize in the air, slowly rotating and silently tightening the space around her cubicle. The air feels thicker, harder to breathe. She doesn't consciously notice them yet, but the spiritual constriction is real. She is voluntarily stepping further into the clockwork prison. Hours later, back in her luxurious but cold apartment, Zara finally unrolls her prayer mat. It feels alien, almost stiff from disuse. She stands to perform the delayed Maghrib prayer, but her mind is a chaotic whirlwind of unread emails, upcoming deadlines, and the replay of the day's meetings. As she raises her hands for takbir, saying Allahu Akbar, the words feel empty in her mouth, lacking resonance. She goes through the physical motions of the prayer, bowing, prostrating, like a robot, a hollow ritual devoid of connection. In Sujud, prostration, where she should find peace, her forehead touches the mat, but her mind is still in the boardroom. The metallic humming sound of the office air conditioning and the relentless ticking of an unseen clock seem to echo loudly inside her head, drowning out the whispers of her own soul asking for peace. The ghostly, translucent gears around her, which appeared earlier in the office, are now more distinct, slowly rotating around her prayer mat, creating a barrier between her and the divine connection she desperately needs but cannot access. She finishes the prayer quickly, feeling no different, perhaps even more anxious than before. After the rushed prayer, Zara stands by the massive floor-to-ceiling window of her high-rise apartment. The view is breathtaking, a sprawling metropolis glittering below like a circuit board. Her apartment is a testament to her success: designer furniture, minimalist decor, awards on the shelves. Yet, standing there wrapped in her expensive silk robe, she feels a profound, aching emptiness in her chest that no amount of money can fill. The silence in the apartment is deafening, broken only by the incessant, low-frequency buzz of technology surrounding her. She presses her hand against the cold glass of the window. The city lights below don't look beautiful tonight. They look cold, sharp, and distant, like millions of unfeeling metallic eyes staring back at her. She realizes with a shudder that she has climbed to the top of the ladder only to find there is nothing up here but cold air and isolation. The visual metaphor intensifies. The metallic gears around her are now casting visible shadows on the walls of her apartment, closing in on her personal space. The next day, the inevitable happens. Zara is in the middle of leading the most critical project launch of her career. She is at the control center, surrounded by screens, confident that every variable is accounted for. Suddenly, a critical system failure occurs. Red warning lights flash across her monitors. Data streams turn into chaotic static. A massive, unforeseen error threatens to collapse months of work in seconds. The illusion of absolute control that Zara has meticulously built her life around shatters instantly. Her team looks to her for answers, panic in their eyes, but her mind goes completely blank. The cold efficiency she relied on evaporates, replaced by raw, paralyzing terror. The sound of the failure, alarm bells, frantic typing, shouting voices, merges into a deafening, rhythmic, mechanical grinding noise in her head, like giant gears screeching to a halt because a wrench has been thrown into the works. The metallic, cool blue lighting of the server room turns an aggressive, flashing emergency red, reflecting the sudden chaos in her perfectly ordered world. Overwhelmed by the catastrophe and the sudden realization of her lack of control, Zara stumbles away from the screens, gasping for air. She rushes into a private server corridor to hide her panic. She leans against a cold metal server rack, her heart pounding violently against her ribs like a trapped bird. She can't breathe. The visual metaphor now fully manifests in her panic-stricken perception. The giant, grinding steel clock gears are no longer translucent ghost images. They are terrifyingly real around her. They close in rapidly, spinning with deafening noise, interlinking to form a literal cage made of time mechanisms around her body. Chains made of watch links wrap tight around her chest, constricting her lungs. She is trapped in a cold, relentless machine of her own making, a prisoner of the very ambition she worshipped. She slides to the floor, surrounded by the deafening noise of the gears and the flashing red emergency lights, realizing with devastating clarity that in her desperate chase to gain the world, she has completely lost herself. Still slumped on the cold floor of the server room corridor, surrounded by the chaotic, flashing red emergency lights and the deafening, grinding noise of the metaphorical clockwork gears crushing her, Zara reaches a breaking point of exhaustion. She can no longer fight the machine. In sheer desperation, she lifts her head, gasping for air. Through a narrow, high window in the corridor, past the dizzying blur of the metallic gears spinning around her vision, she catches a glimpse of the outside world. The sun is setting. An intensely warm, golden, natural light pierces through the artificial gloom, hitting her face directly. It is a stark, shocking contrast to the cold blue and aggressive red artificial lights that have dominated her existence. For the first time in what feels like years, she physically pauses. She stops typing mentally, stops strategizing, stops running. She just breathes. In that split second of stillness, feeling the warmth of the real sun on her skin, The frantic metallic grinding noise in her head seems to hesitate for just a fraction of a second. She realizes with a jolt that there is a reality outside of this metal cage she built, a reality that is warm, still, and waiting for her. In that fragile moment of pause, as the golden sunlight holds her attention, a faint sound penetrates the thick glass of the skyscraper and the overwhelming noise of her internal chaos. It is the Adhan, call to prayer, drifting up from a distant mosque in the city below. Normally, it's just background noise to her busy life, ignored like traffic. But today, in her broken state, the words strike her soul with immense force. As the muezzin sings, Hayya ala Salah, Hayya ala falah, come to prayer, come to success, the words echo profoundly in her mind. Success. She looks around at the flashing red failure lights of her project. This is what she thought success was? The contrast is devastating. The spiritual call acts like a powerful sonic frequency that disrupts the mechanical noise in her head. The giant, ghostly metal gears around her seem to shudder and slow down visibly, their relentless grinding momentarily silenced by the call to ultimate reality. A deep, painful longing for true peace, not just corporate victory, wells up in her chest, bringing hot tears to her eyes that cut through her cold professional veneer. Driven by a sudden, desperate need to escape the noise and answer that call, Zara stumbles to her feet. She feels a powerful urge to physically sever herself from the machine that has enslaved her. With trembling hands but fierce determination, she pulls the flashing Bluetooth earpiece from her ear, the constant symbol of her connection to the hustle, and throws it decisively onto the desk. She grabs her tablet, which is constantly buzzing with new emails, and her phone flashing with notifications. One by one, she deliberately powers them completely down, holding the buttons until the screens go black and the digital noise ceases. The silence that follows is sudden and immense, ringing in her ears. She walks shakily out of the office and into the opulent, quiet office bathroom. She stands before the sink and looks at her reflection, tired eyes, stressed posture. She turns on the tap, not for a quick, mindless splash, but with deep, deliberate intention, niyyah for purification. As she begins to perform wudu, ablution, the physical sensation is profoundly transformative. The cool water feels heavier and more substantial than usual, almost sacred. As she washes her hands 3 times, then rinses her mouth and nose, it feels like she is scrubbing away layers of invisible, hardened metallic grime. The accumulated stress, arrogance, and worldly anxieties of the hustle that have coated her soul. As she washes her face, the water seems to cool the burning ambition in her eyes. With every splash on her arms and feet, the ethereal clockwork machinery around her seems to visibly rust, corrode, and flake away. Her breathing slows down, deepening for the first time in hours. The water acts as a spiritual solvent, dissolving the artificial carapace she had built around her soul, preparing her to enter the presence of her Creator, clean and disconnected from the demands of the Dunya. Finding a quiet, darkened corner in her office, away from the flashing screens, Zara lays down her travel prayer mat. She orients herself away from the sprawling city lights, towards the Qibla. It takes immense effort to raise her trembling hands to her ears. As she whispers, Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest, it is a deliberate act of severing her connection to the worldly chaos that has enslaved her. The first few moments of prayer are a struggle. The echoes of emails and deadlines try to intrude, but she fights them back with the recitation of Al-Fatiha, her voice shaking with raw emotion, pouring out months of exhaustion and spiritual starvation. The true climax arrives when she descends into Sujud, prostration, placing her forehead on the ground in complete, utter submission. In that posture of ultimate humility, lowering her intellect before the divine, the visual miracle occurs. The terrifying, giant metallic clock gears and heavy chains that had imprisoned her chest don't just break. They react violently to the spiritual heat generated by her sincere surrender. They begin to glow uncontrollably from within, turning brighter and hotter. They melt rapidly, dissolving into pools of warm, radiant, liquid golden light that flow away from her body like water, evaporating into a soft, warm mist that fills the room. The cold, hard, constricting metal is replaced by an overwhelming, expanding sense of warmth, spaciousness, and divine peace that floods her entire being. She remains in prostration for a very long time, weeping uncontrollably, tears of sheer relief and liberation, finally breathing freely for the first time in years. A few weeks have passed since her awakening in the server room. The scene returns to the high-pressure environment of the busy corporate office, but the atmosphere immediately surrounding Zara has fundamentally and visibly shifted. She is still dressed sharply and is clearly intensely busy, managing the complex recovery of the project. The screens around her still flash with relentless streams of data and demands. However, the frantic, breathless, manic energy that used to define her every movement is completely gone, replaced by a calm, grounded, and laser-focused intensity. The cold blue office lighting seems warmer around her desk, perhaps softened by a small, living plant she bought, or simply by her own changed energy. The ghostly, oppressive metal gears are completely gone. The air around her is clear. A soft, melodic notification chimes on her phone. It is the prayer time alarm for Dhuhr. Previously, this sound would have caused a spike of anxiety, a feeling of being torn, and an inevitable delay. Now, the reaction is instantaneous and peaceful. Without a second of hesitation, Zara finishes the exact sentence she is typing, calmly saves her work, and locks her computer screen. She stands up with grace, ignoring the rush around her, and walks steadily towards the office prayer room. Her movements are deliberate, not rushed. She has not abandoned her worldly responsibilities. She is still excellent at her job, but she has dethroned them. Work is no longer her master to be feared. It is merely part of her day, subservient to her ultimate purpose. She has found the sustainable rhythm between the ticking clock of the world and the eternal call of her soul. Zara steps away from her desk and walks to a quiet window, looking out at the city, but now seen through eyes of peace rather than ambition. She turns and looks directly into the camera lens, her expression calm, wise, and deeply settled, a stark contrast to the frantic woman in the hook. "We spend so much of our lives running," she begins, her voice steady and compassionate, chasing deadlines, chasing promotions, chasing the next big thing, terrified that if we stop for even a second, we will fall behind. She pauses, letting the words land. But in that frantic chase to gain the whole world, it is so easy to lose your own soul. We become prisoners of the very clocks we built. She smiles gently. True success is not about how fast you run or how much you accumulate. It is about knowing when to stop. It's about finding the balance, knowing that your work has a place, but your worship has a higher one. Don't let the noise of the world drown out the call of your Creator. Find your stillness.